This is an introduction to True North's approach to measuring a brand's position, its strength in the market, the drivers of choice, and performance along these drivers. We do this to identify a brand's strengths and weaknesses so that a firm can identify a strategic direction to strengthen the brand. We also do this to help a firm evaluate if they are moving the needle with programs to move the brand. You will see we take a somewhat different, and I believe better, approach to the traditional brand tracking studies. Let's start with the purchase funnel. As do other firms, we capture where your brand is within this purchase funnel, but we don't stop at just reporting the data. By comparing awareness to consideration, we can provide a quick glimpse at a brand's relative position in the market. In this case, we look at consideration among those who are aware and plot them on this grid. This reveals the rising stars, those brands who are not well known yet, but have a very strong following. If this is your brand, you want to increase awareness. If this is a competitive brand, you want to watch this brand as maybe a potential future threat. Of those brands that are well known and have high consideration, these are the strongest brands in the category. Their job is to hold this position. Finally, many categories have older, more tired brands. These have high awareness, but low consideration. Think of Sears. They would fall into this category. If your brand falls into this category, the strategy would be to improve its core value proposition, to identify new, updated features or benefits to get the market to take a second look. Now, the typical way to capture a brand's perception is to ask respondents to evaluate it on several items using a scale such as this. But since we need to compare it to something, we will ask the respondent to complete the same evaluation for a competitive brand. But one benchmark isn't really enough, so many times we'll have to ask them for a third brand. We might even do it again. The poor respondent, do we really expect them to put thought and consideration into these responses? Would you? If you are in a B2B category, do you really want potential clients or executives going through this process? There's a better way. Does Buffalo Wild Wings have high prices? Now you may ask, compared to what? And that's exactly the point. In the old method, you're not comparing it to anything. It's all in isolation. Now, what if you've never been to Buffalo Wild Wings? How would you answer? These scales rarely have a I don't know option. And a 3 on a 5-point scale is fundamentally different than a I don't know. Now let's just take this illustration a bit further. Does Buffalo Wild Wings have high prices compared to Taco Bell? Now, what about compared to Bonefish Grill or your favorite date night restaurant? Now, did your answer change depending on who we compared Buffalo Wild Wings to? If it did, that's a problem. All of this demonstrates that evaluation should be in context to the competitive set. But we rarely do that. We typically evaluate options in isolation. This is how we have improved the process. I'm using local universities in Kansas as an example. Notice that we're putting all the relevant competitors together. The competitive set is defined. We're not evaluating brands in isolation. Then, since humans don't make decisions on a 5-point scale, since they make choices, we have the respondent make choices. In this case, they will select the universities that have the best reputation. Also notice we have a I don't know option. More about this later. But one of the best features is that in this example, what would be 7 questions is just 1. If we had 10 dimensions on which to rate the brand, we would have needed 70 questions the old traditional way. But here, we only need 10 to get all the data we need. This is much easier for the respondent, even fun, and we get much more data on more competitive benchmarks in a much more realistic fashion. When deciding the attributes to include, of course we include all the functional benefits, but we also prefer to include emotional benefits and even brand personality, since all of these dimensions can influence choice. Again, we can get all of these attributes for all 7 universities in an easy-to-complete questionnaire. Now, as we move into the analysis, one thing we need to keep in mind. As David Ogilvy, one of the greatest advertising minds of this generation, had figured out a long time ago, Consumers don't think how they feel, say what they think, or do what they say. So why do we still ask directly what's most important? The old way of identifying what is most important is to ask. But since humans don't think how they feel, say what they think, or do what they say, that won't tell us the real answer. The solution is to model the importance. We analytically determine the drivers of choice based on the responses from the choice questions. In short, we look at the correlation between preference and a brand's perception on the dimensions we just measured. That's a mouthful. Now, once we identify these drivers of choice, we can compare this to the brand's performance. In this case, we can identify the brand's strengths. These are the dimensions that are very important and where we perform well. Conversely, we can identify areas of opportunity. These are the dimensions that are important but where we perform below average. This grid quickly and easily summarizes a lot of important information. It quickly tells management where to focus. Now, this data collection process does not limit us at all with our analytical capability. In this case, we can build a perceptual map to illustrate the similarity or dissimilarity of different brand positions. Well, in fact, we can do even more with this data. Our approach provides the best way I have ever seen to identify that ever-elusive white space that we all search for. Remember that we added the "don't know" response when evaluating brands? This is where we use it. By plotting the drivers of choice against the percent who don't know who has that attribute, we have a very elegant way of identifying white space. In this case, white space is defined as the attributes that are important, but where respondents don't know who owns those dimensions, leaving them open for any firm to go after them and own them themselves. Of course, there's more to say about how we approach a brand's evaluation and its competitive position. But this gives a good overview. Feel free to contact me directly if you would like to learn more. Thank you.